Hi again, coach. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to deal with a very sensitive issue: child abuse in sport. Typically, when we ask coaches and parents about how common they feel child abuse happens in sport, we get answers like, not a lot, or it's more likely in some sports, but not in mine. They could not be more wrong. There are two main reasons for these misconceptions. First, coaches and parents think that child abuse includes only sexual abuse and corporal punishment. But child abuse, as we will see, involves a much wider range of behaviors, including some that are currently accepted as the norm in certain sports or contexts. Second, a lot of child abuse goes unreported, and we never know about it until years have passed, and as adults, abused child athletes finally gather the courage to speak up and confront their abuses. The reality is very different. Research shows that child abuse in sport is much more prevalent than what people may think. For instance, in a survey of organised sport in the UK in 2011, 75% of children and young people reported emotionally harmful treatment during their participation. Nearly 30% reported different forms of sexual harassment. In a survey conducted in Germany, up to 1/3 of athletes in elite sport reported having experienced some form of sexualized violence, like assault and rape. More and more studies confirm similar findings across the world and across all sports. And these studies also confirm that it's not only coaches who are the perpetrators. In fact, research shows that teammates are the most common abusers, particularly when it comes to emotional abuse. And parents have also been shown to play a big part. When we get up close, children's sport is not always a pretty picture at all. Please have a look at this video. Be aware that it contains upsetting information and testimonies.
I started gymnastics in 1976. I loved it and I had a certain aptitude for it. I was a national team member for 8 years and I was the national champion in 1986. I think it's dangerous to assume that we have a one-guy problem with Nasser and that with him gone, the sport is now safe and these girls are now safe.
More than 250 women have come forward to say they were sexually abused by former USA Gymnastics Dr. Larry Nasser. The scandal has highlighted what many gymnasts say is a culture of abuse within USAG.
The standard and the expectation, if you want to win, is an environment that is rife with physical and emotional abuse. And I think this creates the conditions where sexual abuse can occur.
USA Gymnastics has complaint files on 54 coaches from 1996 to 2006, according to documents obtained by the Indianapolis Star. For decades, USAG empowered itself to investigate complaints before deciding whether to contact law enforcement. Former USAG President Steve Penny once said in a deposition, "To the best of my knowledge, there's no duty to report if you're a third party to some allegation." These gymnastics coaches were accused of sexual abuse. Here's how USA Gymnastics handled their cases. Dawn Peters led the U.S. women's team to a record-breaking 8 medals at the 1984 Olympics.
The head coach of the American women's team is Dawn Peters, one of the most respected men in gymnastics.
In 2011, 3 gymnasts told the Orange County Register that Peters had sex with them when they were teenagers in the 80s. Peters was banned for life by USA Gymnastics 2 months after the report was published. He was also removed from the Sports Hall of Fame. Marvin Sharp was the USA Gymnastics 2010 Coach of the Year. USAG got a detailed account of abuse involving Sharp in 2011, but it wasn't until a 14-year-old came forward in 2015 that the Federation contacted police. Sharp was arrested in August 2015 and committed suicide in his jail cell 1 month later. Stephen Infante was a popular coach in New England gymnastics. In 1997, gymnasts accused Infante of having sex with them when they were teenagers. After an internal investigation, USA Gymnastics barred Infante for life, but the organization didn't go to the police. And Infante continued coaching girls at gymnastics summer camps. Infante was charged with raping one of his former athletes a decade later and was convicted in 2010. Last year, a nonprofit called the U.S. Center for Safe Sport was put in charge of preventing and handling abuse in Olympic sports. And in the wake of the Nasser scandal, the entire USA Gymnastics board has been forced to resign. Many athletes and victims of abuse say these actions are too little too late, and some wonder if it's truly enough to transform a culture that failed to protect its young women.
It's heartbreaking to watch videos like this, but it is important that we remove the taboo and openly face these issues, so they happen less and less until they are completely eradicated. The first thing we need to do to stamp out child abuse is to have clarity about what it is. UNICEF recently led a large working group to develop the International Safeguards for Children in Sport. This text contains some very useful definitions. Let's have a look at them. Abuse refers to the acts of commission or omission that lead to a child experiencing harm. Harm refers to the negative impact or consequences of those acts upon the child. These definitions are still quite generic and broad. To fully grasp this issue, we have to understand that there are different categories of child abuse. UK Coaching and the Child Protection in Sport unit of the NSPCC in the UK have identified 4 major categories of child abuse. 1. Neglect. 2. Physical abuse. 3. Sexual abuse. And 4. Emotional abuse. Let's review each category in detail. Neglect takes place when adults do not meet the basic physical and psychological needs of children. Examples in sport include making kids train in too hot or too cold conditions, not giving them sufficient breaks, or failing to provide adequate supervision. Physical abuse happens when someone causes physical harm or injury to a child. Examples in sport include hitting, pushing, or giving a child performance-enhancing drugs. It is important to know that some forms of overtraining also count as physical abuse. Sexual abuse occurs when adults or other young people use children to meet their own sexual needs. This could include all types of sexual relationships, grooming, all forms of sexual harassment like inappropriate touching or verbal remarks, involving a child in the production of pornographic materials, or showing inappropriate materials to a child. Finally, emotional abuse refers to the ongoing psychological maltreatment of a child, and it can have long-lasting negative effects on the child. In sport, it can take the shape of constant criticism by coaches, teammates and parents, sarcasm, bullying, or excessive pressure and expectations to perform. Okay, this is a lot to take in. Let's take some time to reflect on these ideas. In the next video, we will talk about the consequences of child abuse, and we will learn to identify the most common signs of abuse. For now, please complete the relevant activities in the study guide, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.